It's a real pleasure to welcome Emma Walsh, CEO of Parents at Work. Welcome, Emma.
Thanks, Graham. It's great to be here.
Emma, what does care in the workplace mean to you?
Well, first of all, can I just say I love that is your first question on this podcast because so often we don't put care and workplace in the same sentence. So I just love this question. And it goes really deep to the heart of my why, actually. But I'm sure we'll get into that. But just put simply, care in the workplace for me is about creating an environment where people can thrive professionally and personally. And that's just about how do we help people thrive at work and at home. It's about recognizing that, employees don't leave their caring responsibilities, their health concerns, their life challenges, their life dreams at the door when they come to work. Care is about designing workplaces where, we acknowledge that people live whole lives and it's about supporting them to succeed. So but I know that can seem really, "Oh, isn't that lovely?" And I get that, but I think care isn't about simply being nice or offering occasional, well-being initiative. It's about culture, it's about leadership, it's about ways of working, it's about ensuring, policies, practice, leadership behaviors really genuinely enable people to, yeah, balance work, family, well-being without fear,
Mm.
really, is so much of what comes to that, flexibility and caring responsibilities aren't going to damage the way they're judged, their career prospects, their pay opportunities. And, you know, deeply believe that family-friendly, caring workplaces aren't just good for individuals, it's good for business. And when people feel supported and included, they're more engaged, they're more productive, they're more likely to stay. And, care creates conditions where people can bring, well, their best selves to work. And when I look at the future of work and I look at what's coming down, on the bullet train that's heading towards us all, globally, this huge aging workforce. Every nation on earth is aging. We're having less babies and
Yeah.
there are more and more aging people. And so the more of us are going to do over our lifetime need care, or we'll be giving
Yeah.
it to somebody else. And how are we going to manage that? How are workplaces going to rise to meet that challenges? How are governments going to rise to meet those challenges? And, you know, and the other big one is obviously AI, and how are we going to imagine, you know, I think probably every job will have a human part machine do it.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so how do we think of care as the real essence of humanity of,
Yeah.
AI can't emotionally feel care. Humans do
Mm.
that,
Mm.
So anyway, a
Mm.
great place to start. Thank you for
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, no, fantastic. So your mission now is, helping organizations build family-friendly workplaces. But for our
Mhm.
listeners, it'd be great to get a little bit of a background about how you ended up with this mission.
Well, as I said to you, obviously in prep for this, is that I feel like a really ordinary person with actually an ordinary story. And I think and why is that? Well, because I, like many young women, left school in the 90s. And anyone who was part of that era will remember it was a period in time where globalization was on the rise. The women were more and more empowered to take on, careers. And it was all about you can do anything, you can be anyone, you can work anywhere, you can do anything. And I set off in the world with that wonderful backdrop and thought about, right, well, what am I going to do in this world? And I really enjoy people. What am I going to do with that? And it was my father who said to me, actually, Emma, I think you'd be great at human resources. And I thought, what's that? I don't never heard of that term. And actually, my dad was quite really advanced now I think about it back then, because really 90s was not even, I don't think human resources as a term was really even coined that much. It was still personnel, if you
Yeah,
remember.
or payroll.
Uh, On payroll and, recruitment. And I set about thinking, okay, well, that sounds good because I'm going to need to have a career. and I'm going to need to earn money, and I'm going to want to do that with a family. And how is that? So I'm going to go about doing that in my 20s because I know in my 30s I'm going to want a baby. And so off I went. And true to form, about 29 years old, I'd had this amazing career in HR, and I was lucky enough to do that internationally as well. And I'd worked in lots of large, organizations, big names that we would know internationally. And I loved my career. But one thing that I had noticed was working in HR, you obviously get every employee dispute come across your table. And one of the things that I'd started to notice was that a lot of those disputes and complications were about women having babies, taking parental leave, wanting to come back and negotiate part-time, being sidelined, being told not to give them any pay rises or pay reviews, clawing back paid parental leave if we were offering it at all. It seemed that I just saw penalty after penalty. And
Yeah.
I found one particular incident at work at the time where I was negotiating a return to work with a particular employee with a difficult leader. And that leader screamed down the phone to me, "Over my dead body, is she coming back part-time? Get rid of her." And that was one of the turn points for me where I went, wow, I feel like I'm staring down the barrel of my future. This is going to
Mm,
happen to me. But I
mm,
also felt so complicit and powerless at that moment to really do
mm,
anything about it.
mm.
And I decided I was done, actually, not long after that. And at the age of 29, I left the corporate world, quite young still, thinking, right, I have great HR skills and consulting skills. I'm going to just build my own. I'll just do my own HR consulting work. And that will work really well for me because I will be able to get the flexibility I need. Because I know that I'm going to want to be a great mum and I'm going to want to
Mm.
continue to have a great career. And not long after that, I did set up an HR consulting business for about 12 months. 12 months in, I fell pregnant with twins. And I thought, right, now I know why I've been so obsessed with how I was going to balance work and family. And I thought, right, wow, well, now's my time. And I thought, you know what? I can continue this HR consulting work. I do know how to do it. I've done it before. It's easy money, so to speak. I could do it with my
Mm,
eyes closed. And I thought,
mm.
no, I really deeply care about the fact that other women are being sidelined. Other women are being pushed out of the workforce. I want to create something that gives people a chance like I
Yeah,
had and to
yeah,
keep them connected to their workplace. And
yeah.
so our organization was born when my twins were about 6 months old.
Wow.
And we just didn't, there was no real business plan. We just decided to see how we could help people stay connected to their workplace, do return to work programs for mums that needed it, and very much a not for profit, free reviews of their resumes, anything we could do. Because back then, Graham, no one would have paid me any money for doing that work. So it
Um,
was
mm,
100% about wanting to give back, to try and use my HR contacts and expertise to push organizations to think about running return to work programs. So that was really early on in, the infancy of what we know to be, we're talking 20 years ago. So a lot has changed in that time, but a lot hasn't.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
really the 20-year journey, year on year, I thought, have I done enough? Should I give up on this? This is really hard, really hard because I'm pushing society change. I'm pushing, employers to do something they don't want to do. I'm trying to lobby government to do something they don't want to invest in. That was just, it felt like there was just so many roadblocks.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was putting my personal, you know, well-being, my financial well-being, our family's well-being on the line for this.
Mm,
And there were
mm.
so many times that I wanted to give up and pack it all in. But it's just
Yeah.
something it's burning in me, like, no, got to keep doing it. And yeah, anyway, so here we are.
Good. I'm good friends with Avril Henry, who I'm sure you've met.
Yes, I remember Avril. She was one of the women I spoke to in the early days.
She, was pretty heavily involved in Westpac being the first organisation or
Yeah.
first bank, and I think probably first large organisation to offer maternity leave. And once there was that precedent, it made a massive difference. And it is great to see how it's evolved. And it's interesting now, I have friends who have sons that have had kids and they've had paternity leave. And I thought, boy, I wish I had that when my kids were growing up. But so what percentage would offer paternity leave these days of organisations?
Oh, that's a great question. I think paid parental leave has got to be one of the most controversial, complex, convoluted policies that organizations have in place, including government. That when you think of leave, any kind of other leave provision policy that exists in an organization, they're actually pretty straightforward. But it's not uncommon for me to get a 20-page document covering parental leave policy for an organization. You almost need to be a lawyer to interpret it.
Wow.
And that's because we use all sorts of different terms, often try and put in all sorts of different caveats. So there are lots of different terms that we use to describe parental leave. One of them is obviously maternity leave, paternity leave, primary care, secondary care, and they're all designed to put men and women in a box around how they care and how much they should get based on that caring. And so in Australia, actually, paternity leave is not a label that the government use anymore to describe leave taken by men. Australia has introduced one paid parental leave scheme, which allows families from the 1st of July up to 26 weeks to share. There is a proportion that is ring-fenced for men to use, but that doesn't preclude them from using more should their partner also want to take that leave. Organisations, some have followed suit with the government and have removed those labels, and there's just one parental leave policy in their organisation, and they allow men and women to fully use it and access the same leave provisions regardless of gender. And then we've got some organisations that only allow women to take parental leave. They don't permit men to take parental leave. And so there's that group of companies. Then there's a whole lot that don't pay anything at all and don't contribute at all. So it's very difficult to get your head around a number of people taking paternity leave or men taking parental leave. But we do know certainly it's on the rise because more organisations are making sure that they're opening up access, trying to, as part of their gender equality progress, make it easier for men and women to share care, which is super important if we want to close the gender equality gap. And we do know that WGEA, the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, is asking organisations to report on and measure and put improvement plans in place for men accessing parental leave. So it's one to watch, but a difficult one to get a perfect stat on as to how many. And even that is an issue, that we can't as a nation really get some accurate, easy figures on that. But it is on the rise.
I just want to take a bit of a slight tangent now. And I saw in your background that you've been in a leadership position with Career Development Australia, and you had also managed a leadership development program for a large organisation. And I'm very interested, I guess, in the knowledge you gain on both those things about what were the parts of the role that really led to people becoming good leaders and then great leaders? Were you able to identify the elements that most contributed to that?
Oh, yeah, great question. I think, a really obvious answer to that, and maybe not a necessarily sexy answer to that question, is emotional intelligence. So much of great leadership comes down to emotional intelligence, the ability to read a room, read an individual, sense what might be going on underneath there, and using critical thinking skills in that moment to go, what might be needed of me right now, based on what I'm seeing in front of me and what I'm hearing, and being able to be really deliberate around how we respond to those things. So great emotional intelligence is about self-awareness,
Yeah,
and it's
definitely.
about,
Mm,
yeah, and it's about self-management. And
mm,
I think great leaders deeply understand that, and they
mm,
practice that so well. And it's that they reflect on a daily basis. How did I show
mm,
up today?
mm,
Was I the person I wanted to be? And, what did I notice today about what was going on for other people? And how did I respond to that? And trying to put yourself in the shoes of other people,
mm.
because leadership is all about people, isn't it?
It is.
And
Mm,
once read a brilliant article very long time ago from Harvard Business Review, and it was something like, is it a requirement, or do all new leaders in general need to have a psychology degree? Question mark. And I thought, yeah, probably. Might be a good idea. Will really help them enormously. But
yeah,
it was like
yeah.
really telling, isn't it? Because if you don't, and I often would talk about this as a facilitator of leadership programs, if you don't really like people, enjoy interacting with people, don't get a kick out of people, you
Mm,
absolutely shouldn't be doing leadership
yeah.
work. And
Mm.
yet there are plenty of people who do take on leadership roles. They're not really people. They do know that. And yet they put themselves in the lion's den. And I go, why? Why would you do that to yourself? Because leadership is all about people and
Yeah.
how well you can communicate with people, connect with people, engage with people, influence people, inspire people, all of those things. And you almost don't need to know anything else other than really understanding people.
Well,
And
it is. We were talking before we came on air about,
yeah.
my new book, Great Leaders Care, and
Mm,
in the crew care section, which is the leadership and team optimization, and it's broken into three bits about caring about belonging, building a sense of belonging. And when there is so much uncertainty and disruption in the workplace,
mm,
feeling that you belong is pretty important, isn't it? And I just wanted to also extend that to people that may be on maternity leave or paternity leave. How
mm.
do you help them belong when they're at home and not coming into the office as much, not having the face-to-face contact as much?
Yeah, and I think that this goes for so many people now, doesn't it? That not in the office regularly. I mean, this is what employers get whipped up around, because it's like,
Mm,
oh, how can I manage them or engage with them? And how do I know what they're
mm,
doing? And how do I know that they're deeply caring about the work the way that I need them to? And blah, 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 blah. I think this is one of the most difficult modern workplace challenges for any leader
mm,
today, is
mm,
this, managing hybrid, flexible work arrangements and people's well-being needs.
mm,
Because often leaders feel an intense pressure, if they're going to do the right thing by leadership, then I've got to care about every individual need that every individual in my team has. And they get very stressed very quickly.
mm,
And I do think that leads to a lot of leader burnout, because there are
mm,
some really great leaders out there that genuinely care, and then they
mm.
get caring fatigue and they
Well,
crash and burn.
they forget about self-care.
They do. Yeah,
And
they do. Yeah.
as everyone
Mm.
acknowledges, you can't assist or support others if you don't have fuel in your own tank. It's impossible. It's
No,
impossible.
that's right.
Mm,
It is really difficult. And I think and I have definitely fallen in this trap. I mean, I wrote an article years ago now and about caring fatigue, going, it's
mm,
real.
mm,
I don't think we talk about it enough. I
mm.
think when we think about caring fatigue, probably our minds go to, oh, someone who's having to deal with a relative with high dependent needs that can't be
Yeah.
left alone. We take our mind to someone, yeah, with deep caring responsibilities who can't in any way get out of them. They're
Mm,
shackled to them. But actually, all of us feel caring fatigue. You don't have to have a
mm,
family to feel caring fatigue. It is totally about your attachment, your emotional attachment to what you're doing and the people
yeah.
around you, and
Yeah.
how well you learn to manage your emotional attachment in a way that serves you and them. And I think that's just the greatest leadership challenge of, of all time, really, and something I still try to practice each week and never think I quite nail, because it's really hard. I don't want to sit here and say that this is super easy stuff because it isn't. And,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone leaves the house really with this idea that, you know what, I'm going to have a really bad day today. It's all going to go pear shaped. I'm going to miss my bus. I'm going to, get into an argument with my partner or my colleague. I'm going to, not deliver on something and I'm going to be a really bad performer.
Mm, mm,
And yet, by the end of the day, that's exactly what they think about themselves.
mm, mm,
And that's because life didn't go to plan that day. They
mm.
didn't leave the house intending for any of those things to happen, but they walked home from work and that's what was on their shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah.
And life is messy
Yeah. Yeah.
and often unpredictable and rarely goes to plan. And I think for many people, when you have a genuine, positive outlook and a hope for something and a set of expectations around how something's going to go, whether it's an
Yeah.
interaction with your boss or, a way you're going to get to work or an interaction with your child or whatever, and it doesn't go that way and it gets messed up,
Yeah.
then I think for people who have that just happening to them over and over and over again every single day,
Yeah.
and yet they're pouring in deep care,
Mm.
trying to prevent all these things from happening. Caring fatigue it just envelops them. It's very difficult in that moment. So
Yeah.
caring fatigue is real. We don't talk about it enough. And it particularly is hard for young parents and
Yeah.
not just mothers, fathers too. There is so much pressure, the sleep deprivation, the sense of needing for the fathers often go back to work and provide a really, and quickly get home as well if they've had to go to an office or a work site because they don't want to leave their partner for too long because they know that they've probably had a really tough day. And they come in with all the work pressures and all the stress that happened at work and they hit the wall with everything stressful that happened at home. No one's happy in that story. And then they go and do it all again tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. And we wonder why families feel broken from that, that a strain gets to them. How can anyone feel like they're going to turn up and be their best self if that's the relentlessness of what people are dealing with? And it is. That's just true, Graham. That's what most households are dealing with, young families.
Yeah. What do you think, the benefits to family, having a family-friendly workplace is obviously good for them and should be. But what do you say to those about, what does it do for the business? What's the evidence
Mm.
for a CFO about why we should do this? You mentioned before that you had a boss that said that, I'm not doing this, get them out here. What do you present to them to challenge that assumption that it's too much hassle to try and make it happen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've often thought about that moment where the manager spoke to me like that and I went, I'm done. Graham, I never went back to the corporate workplace. I thought it was going to be easier to start my own business than re-enter an employer. Now that's extreme because I think most people would know it is not easier starting a small business. I didn't happen to know that at the time, but no, I think of my loss to employers, where I could have gone on to be a huge asset to employers, but they lost me, and they lost me to their organization. And how many more people like me were lost to their organization? And what was the cost of that? And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions in business is that care and performance are somehow competing priorities. That I think in my experience, the highest performing organizations are often the ones that care the most about their people.
You're
And
preaching to the converted.
a
Well,
culture of,
because I always, bring up just about every episode the evidence from Gallup that, they've got one statement, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. And they just show amazing business outcome from that. High productivity, high profit, a lot of people stay there and the better the customer
loyalty.
service and the
Yeah.
loyalty, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's
So
priceless.
Yeah.
I
And
think
then,
employee loyalty is priceless, and I
yeah.
think that we undervalue care is undervalued and underrated in organizations, I would say.
And the other
And
element, which probably
mm,
isn't spoken about, but is around, friendship at work. And
yeah,
the Gallup
exactly.
organization also have a statement in their Q12, which is, I have a best friend at work. And
Hmm.
people that strongly agree to that are 7 times more engaged than someone that says, I disagree with that. 7 times more engaged. And, that's discretionary effort. That's loyalty. That's going
Mm,
beyond what's expected. So, one of
mm,
my, as you may recall, one of my things in the book is that,
yeah,
care isn't a soft skill, it's a strong skill. And
yeah,
quite frankly, it will differentiate between a good and great team and a good and great organization,
yeah,
especially when there's uncertainty, when people aren't, feeling vulnerable or whatever.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I think, gosh, aren't Australian employers chasing productivity? Aren't they obsessed with it? And I go, wow,
But
there's a
it's not
solution.
happening.
It's over here.
But it's not
Just
happening.
care for
All
people
this
more. And I'm
technology is
like,
coming in, but the needle isn't moving on productivity. So something is
exactly.
amiss. It's
And
something that's,
I just go, wow, do you know what? When I look at my team, and we have such a small team, we are 10 people, but we do global work. And when new people start our organization or when new clients come on board, they're like, oh my goodness, had no idea you were doing all of this. What?
mm,
And I go, oh, yeah. Oh, I guess we just do it. I don't know, like, and, so much of many of my team members have been with me a very long time. We've been through so many highs and lows. We've learned so much together. There's deep friendship. And occasionally from time to time, we've thought, oh, maybe we're all too close. But we really identify with being, even though we can irritate, each other, of course, it's normal in a small team that have worked together for a long time, like family members. But ultimately, underneath it all, we deeply care about the
mm,
work we're doing. We're
mm,
so proud of it. And we, with every adversity or every challenge that we get, we go, right, really annoying. How are we going to overcome that? And so I think a culture of care, it's not about lowering standards. It's not about letting people have more days off. It's not about, avoiding accountability or just being really nice. It's really about creating the conditions that people feel enabled to perform at their best. I
yeah,
just want my people to be able to perform at their best. And
100%.
if that
Yeah,
means they need to deal with stuff that's going on at home, so they need to sort that out to be great at work, then they should do that. I don't want to get in the way with that. And I want to help them with that
yeah,
because I know that's good for them and it's good for me too. And it's in
yeah.
our best interest to support each other. So as an employer, I just go, what's wrong with all these other employers? They can't see that that's the magic to productivity. And I often think as these talk about what makes a great organization, it comes down to 3 C's. One is care for customers. The other is care for community. And the other is care for their people. Well, that's a
Mm,
P, not a C.
mm,
But yeah, care for colleagues.
yeah, yeah,
When you
yeah.
get those 3 things right,
Mm,
that's the golden triangle. That's when you become a great organization, a legacy building organization. And not many have got that right. And it's
just
hard.
want to
Yeah.
jump to, I guess, something more personal, and that's around,
Mm.
you as an individual, you as a
Mhm.
leader. How do you switch off?
Oh, good question. I am pretty good at jumping from things.
Ah,
And what do I mean by that? I can switch from thing to thing quite easily. I can be doing this podcast with you and then in about 10 minutes be walking the dog and I've changed sets from where I am. So my transition zone between doing something and then moving to something else is quick.
mm,
And I think that serves me super, super well. It isn't something that necessarily I mean, I do think part of it, I've got that it's a natural strength of mine, but I've also come to learn to use it to my advantage much more.
mm.
And so being able to switch from one thing to the next, and maybe that's having to deal with twins. I don't know. Maybe that helped me deal with that, having to do 2 things at once, attend to 2 people, multiple things at any one time. And I think that the other thing is recognizing when I find myself doing a couple of things at once, or even in something, one thing that I'm doing specifically, I've tried to get better at going, is this the best use of my time right now? As if I was like my mum had come and tapped my shoulder and said, Emma, should you really be doing that right now? Um, and that little voice goes in my head. And when it does, I pay attention because I usually know it's popped in because it probably shouldn't be. And I have to, at that moment, stop and go, "Mm-mm, no, you probably shouldn't. Time to make a decision whether you're going to continue or you're going to put it down and go to the next thing that needs your attention." So I've had to get, so self talk, I think, is really valuable, and learning to when to switch it and listen to it. And that's because I think I'm an intuitive person generally. And so I guess I try to really be in touch with my intuition. And that also includes if I can see it happening over there. Like often my team know I have a bit of a sixth sense about things. And so I've tried to listen to that,
Mm,
and to tap into intuition is a really great thing. And that's
mm,
often about your subconscious trying to tell you something, or something you just can't quite get your finger on, and trying to just stop in those moments and just pay some quick attention to something. So I mean, so that's about thinking habits. I am quite a creative person, and I like to have a fulsome life. So I was saying to you before this, a lot of people know me as a bit chaotic. That's because I'm trying to pack as many things into my day as possible because I'm energized by that. And I do tend to, my mum often used to say to me when I was like, forehead, I just was wanting to constantly, my daughter is a bit like it. So I now see myself through my mother's eyes, actually, in my daughter, of just wanting to make the most of every day. And so
wonderful.
sometimes
Yeah.
I try and really, I need to stop, and I'm not great at that. And I'm the first to admit it. Yeah. So
Our, go-
progress.
our time has gone very quickly, Emma, and I always finish with the same question as well, which is basically knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self when so for example, where your father suggested going into HR, what knowledge would you give that person starting a career down that track?
Yeah. Oh, do you know what? It's pretty simple. I mean, I think there's two things. One, hang in there. You know, and I think that phrase is such a really important thing. The reason I'm still here today, 20 years in business doing this work, is because I've hung in there just one day at a time. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to, have it all plotted out.
Mm,
And that actually the beauty of life is letting things unfold,
mm,
actually, and being
mm.
open to what comes next, trusting in the universe, that things will unfold as they should, and being open and ready to respond to things that come, and that probably you can handle way more than you think you can,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you don't need all the answers. You so don't need all the answers at all.
I think that's a
Yeah,
great message because sometimes easy to overthink things, isn't it? Just rather than
totally.
just start and learn by doing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
particularly in this world, there is so
Mm,
much evidence that learning by doing is a bloody good way to do it. Having a good coach also helps, but learning
totally.
by doing is
Totally.
a good way to
Yeah, yeah,
approach
yeah.
it.
Totally.
I've really enjoyed our chat. Thank you, Emma. Thank you so much for being part of the Caring CEO.
Graham, thank you, and keep up the amazing work. We need you.
Thank
Definitely. More of you, please, in the world.
you.